dedication that is on page 3. All mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors, harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness. Separated from suffering, I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect, precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation. Omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddha. All mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, especially those enemies me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other perfections. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached by the merit of generosity and other. May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated. That is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings as the sky have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Please take a moment to check in with your body, making sure that it is placed in the position and the posture that is comfortable, at ease. And to get to the point of being at ease, it's necessary to take a scan of the body to see where you might be unintentionally putting pressure on or letting your body weight all go on one side or the other side, whether it's the front, back, left, or right. Pay attention to how you are sitting, especially if you're seated on the floor. Especially if you're seated on the floor, these cushions, these zafus, are not designed for you to fully occupy the entire zafu. In fact, it's ideal to have at least half of the cushion sticking out from behind, because the idea is that this cushion is providing extra support for specifically your vertebrae, providing support for your spine rather than your two knees. So if you are awkwardly hovering almost on the cushion, that probably means you have been deceived by the looks of the cushion and you're trying to sit on the entire cushion. And that is actually bad for your posture. So think of that cushion as simply something to tuck underneath the base of your spine to provide extra support, so that eventually then the back of your spine and your two other points of contact, primary contact, together they form a tripod, just like the tripod that is right here. These 3 points. If you're seated on the chair like I am, whether with legs crossed on the chair or not, again, pay attention to how much weight, how much stress you're putting on the base of your spine. So chairs are in some ways not designed for optimal health of the spine. So to compensate for that, you may need to put something again underneath to tuck in the same way as the cushion, or to put support between the back of your chair and your back. Anyway, don't be too rigid about any of these suggestions that I'm giving. Pay attention. All these instructions are simply suggestions and reference points for you to skillfully bring attention to the body, noticing how and where the stress points are. There are some stress points that is not so easy to adjust right now. But know that even those stress points that are not so easy to fix or to adjust right now, over time, if you pay attention, over time, if you learn how to bring breath, which is energy, and mind, so breath, mind, and therefore energy, if you're able to bring these 2 or 3 elements together and direct it to those stress points within your body, then over time, those stress points will clear. Because these stress points, energetically speaking, is basically these energy channels being blocked. And when the energy channels are being blocked, then stress form around there and then become stress points. The first step to directing mind, energy, breath to those stress points is to gently imagine as you breathe in, bringing that breath to that place, to that spot. And let this breath energy mind be like a soothing breeze sweeping over that hot spot and cooling it down just a little bit, slightly, no rush, no hurry, patiently bringing breath, energy, mind to that spot and to another spot, wherever you are able to notice that there is tension or stress being exerted at those specific points in the body. Overall, take time to experience embodiment. This is not an exercise where you need to control or discipline your mind into a single pointed focus. In fact, this is a multitasking activity, but done within the context of no hurry, no force, no anxieties, but leisurely. Leisurely, but present. And present in a leisurely way, without force, without impatience, but turning up to give attention to the body, seeing the body sometimes behaving like a child, sometimes behaving like an old man or old woman, stubborn but quiet, or like a child demanding, noisy, but fleeting. So allow it to be a dynamic process. Sometimes noticing the mass and the weight as a quality of body. Sometimes noticing the movement and lightness as yet another quality of body. Sometimes noticing heat and temperature. Sometimes noticing the moisture, the wetness. All these are the workings of the elements, the physical elements in combination has characteristics, qualities of body. Then these elements are powered by subtle energies that resemble these coarser qualities of mass, heat, motility, and fluidity. These energies are related to minds, to attention, to intention. Know that then body is not just body. Body is in many ways inseparable from energy. Energy is driven by mind. And when the minds are all over the place, then energy becomes scattered. When energies become scattered, body becomes restless. Therefore, when mind becomes comfortable and settled, energy begins to gather at the natural points where energy gathers within the body, and the body relaxes into ease, into a place of comfort and ease. Sometimes just pay attention to the experience of breath, the satisfaction of breath. And sometimes you may note there is a hunger in the area of breath as well, and how breath can become restless, uneven, jagged. Then gently, lightly encourage your diaphragm to expand more. Breathing in, expanding the whole body like a balloon. And then inevitably, naturally, breathing out, the body, the diaphragm contracts, expands, contract. And so you can also spend some moments checking in with that. And so this is a active, holistic attending to body and mind. Not at all. The stereotype of a single pointed focus on a minute spot somewhere in the mind or somewhere on the floor or somewhere on the wall. But rather within the context of boundless spaciousness, turn up for both body and mind, and be attentive, skillfully attentive to the processes of body and mind. Look again and again at both body and mind. Body and mind as processes rather than states, rather than structures, but as dynamic processes from moment to moment. Always in formation as well as disintegration. Just some comments on some of the phrasing, some of the words in the opening recitation. The first one is this maybe peculiar phrasing of mother sentient beings. So mother sentient beings is a literal translation of Ma Semchen. Semchen literally those who possess minds. Sem is mind, Chen is possessor. Possessor of minds are therefore beings, sentient beings. But this mother here is a reminder for us to consider how beings, how sentient beings have been kind to us the way our mother has been kind to us. Then almost always people are like, mother, having a hard time with mother. Universally, probably any culture at any periods of time, there are people who are having issues with mother or father, or this or that. Having said that, I think it's also maybe more of an issue in the West. I think, I don't know, speculating. It also has something to do with the West as a collective culturally. People are also having questions and issues with God. Because God is, right, the language of God and the language of parents, father, by extension, mother. And there's so much projection on what God is. And by design, I think, not by accident. And therefore, father, mother are these godlike beings. And then we discover they are not. And a lot of disappointment, a lot of kind of expectations, you know? Like, just like God should deliver because I behave. How come mom and dad did not deliver when I behaved, you know? So have a little less expectations. They're doing their best. They tried their best. You are doing your best. You try your best. Anyway, it says, consider how beings have been kind to us, are kind to us, like our mothers have been kind to us, recognizing the kindness, the response of gratitude arises, and specifically gratitude that arises in the form of wishing and wanting these people who have been kind to me to have happiness and to be free from suffering. So it says here, yeah, to think of sentient beings as mothers. You could substitute. Think of sentient beings as those who have been kind to me. And then boundless as the sky. Then particularly three specific difficult types are highlighted, especially those enemies who hate me. Very strong words, yeah. enemies who hate me. Still, even now, I think for most of us, we wake up without having a clear sense of enemies, thankfully. Only when things get difficult, when we're dealing with other people, and when we exaggerate, we might say, oh, she's my enemy. But for the most part, at least in this room, I think that we don't really, no one really walks around going, oh, that enemy. But nonetheless, basically, enemies are those who we feel are actively wanting us to suffer, to have harm fall on us. Obstructors who harm me. So these are a little less intentional than enemies. They're just those in the way. Obstructors. They're just in the way. Rather than enemies, they're just like, why are these people on the road? Don't they have work to do? They should get off the road, I'm stuck in this traffic that I didn't plan for, right? So these are obstructors, those who are standing in your way innocently, incidentally, but nonetheless, they are in your way. Then this third group, those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, these are usually the ones that we hold close and dear. This third group is actually, superficially, they are the ones that we actually like. But here it's saying, if you lean into that and watch and pay attention, they create obstacles on my path to freedom. I will address omniscience in a moment. Leave that aside for now. And they are the ones that you say, I'm going to go to EBS, in 2 weekends, and I'm not available that weekend. Oh, come on, let's go, float down the river. Meditation, God, that's really boring. Like, why do you need to meditate? And they are not even wishing harm on you. They're not exactly, for no rhyme or reason, jamming up your street and you can't get out. They, in fact, mean well, but they are obstacles. Sounds harsh, of course. Yes, I agree. But the Buddha is not encouraging us, to hate anyone, but in a very matter-of-factly pointing out, in our desire to become free, we have to honestly look at what is it that is standing in the way. And this third group tends to be those that constitute the category of like. The first one is clearly dislike. The second is more neutral, obstructors, kind of neutral. And then the third one is like. So like, don't like, neutral. Given the right conditions or wrong conditions, they rise up as problems. But the point here is saying, even towards those, we wish them happiness. We wish them freedom from suffering. and we wish them lasting freedom from suffering and lasting happiness, which is this last phrase. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious awakening, Buddhahood. I wish them happiness. I wish them freedom from suffering, which is the line before. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. That sometimes is said to be wishing them like these two states in the short term, in the interim. But there's no real freedom from suffering, attainment of lasting happiness until they become awake with this. So in the meanwhile, you could protect them in the dream state. If you see someone running to you in the dream state and saying monsters are chasing them, you could provide them relief. But as long as they're still in the dream, you can't always be there to protect them. So the best thing that can happen for them, the best thing that you can do for them is to facilitate their waking up. So that's that last line. May I quickly establish them, and may I quickly elevate them. This establish is a very literal translation of the Tibetan, but the connotation is may I elevate them out of the dream state. What is this omniscience business? Omniscience, literally, all-knowing. Tamche Kempa in Tibetan. Tamche, all. Kempa, knowing all. So Buddhists, like others, sometimes even Buddhists, lapse into this theistic mode, meaning thinking that surely there is some power out there who knows everything and therefore is in control. Don't panic. And often this all-powerful being is also conceived of as benevolent. Here, all-knowing omniscience, for sure, within, like I said, the Buddhist world, Buddhists throughout time have spent time trying to hash out exactly what this means in the Buddhist context. Because in the Indian context, there were theists, those who believe that there's a being separate from us that has the grand design, that has designed this, either because he got bored, or because, I mean, really, seriously, they speculated on that. He was bored, needed some playmates, and so created all of this for fun. Or there's a grand plan, almost like the older Mormons don't talk about this anymore these days, but in the older understanding, everyone becomes God with your own planets, and your family is your kingdom. Anyway, there's also notions like that there's a grand design, that God is just the first among all who achieve that, and now, brought this disembodied souls into embodiment so that they can reach perfection. Ideas like that in India. But the Buddha sidestepped away from that theistic mode and said, no, happiness and suffering ultimately, it's an inside job. It has nothing to do with an external being or even force, or nature, or it's you are the decider of these experiences. So then they said, so what does this all-knowing mean? On the colloquial or on the folk level, I would say, many Buddhists think of Buddhas as godlike in the sense of knowing everything. They say they know the past, they know the present, they know the future. But what's most important about saying that Buddhas are all-knowing, and even the expression Buddhas are all-knowing because they know the 3 times. If you have read enough Buddhist texts, you'll come across this expression, the 3 times, meaning past, present, future, right? At the core of what that means is they know cause and effect. They know what we call karmic causality. They understand, they see without mistake that things don't happen without rhyme or reason. And then more specifically, the rhyme or reason has nothing to do again with some external being or external force, whereby the rest of us are just innocent bystanders that happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time or right place at the right time. That the rhyme or reason is what the Buddha called the law of cause and effect, or karmic causality. So knowing the 3 times, knowing past, present, and future, I would say is best understood as a poetic expression of who are Buddhas. Buddhas are those who are free, right? It says freedom. Here it says, yeah. Obstacles on my path to liberation or freedom or bondage. Bondage that comes from what? From the mental defilements, from the afflictive emotions, from the 3 poisons. They have achieved freedom from that. They are no longer dragged around by these fleeting, temporary conditions. How did they become free? They became free when they fully, completely understood the workings of causality, cause and effect. So in that sense, they know past, present, and future. Buddhists did speculate on, they tried to do some, intellectual, philosophical gymnastics. Buddhists knowing the future. And so they did entertain how, they know the future. The future is not here yet. The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't exist. The present. Be here now, right? What now? Every now is just an abstract that existed for the moment where in your own mind, you postulated past and future. These are 3 very unreliable witnesses that you can never take to court. Yeah, you introduce the judge. I brought past, present, and future here. If it's a good judge, or not the judge, the cross-examining the other attorney, right? It's like, okay, you just brought past, present, and future. So present, how do you vouch for you being present? Right? Then, of course, the next question would be, hey, past and future, how do you vouch for your existence? So they can never be, legitimate witnesses at court, past, present, and future. And so there's no past, present, and future from that perspective. Sometimes called the ultimate perspective. But then sometimes when we say ultimate, right, we like to put a capitalized U, some metaphysical ultimate. It's not that mystical. It's not that, it doesn't come with fireworks. Ultimate simply means when you look clearer, you see how all experiences are constructs. And then poetically, all experiences are like dreams, illusions, movies. They have that quality. Are they really illusions? It's up to you if you want to go that far. But we don't need to go that far. We just need to have enough suspension of disbelief to experiment with how does it change my being in the world when I am able to cultivate an understanding of experiences being like a dream, like a magical illusion, like a movie. Like a good movie. A good movie, right, brings you into that reality that is being created. But this is temporary. So this is the illusion-like nature, which is said to be the ultimate, from the ultimate perspective. From the relative perspective, this illusory-like nature of experiences unfolds, plays out, again, not haphazardly, plays out according to karmic causality, cause and effect. So these are the two sides of, we say, two sides of reality. And in some ways, the process of waking up, the practices for safeguarding the heart, for protecting ourselves and others from suffering, from helping ourselves and others to find happiness, from the interim to the lasting point. You could think of it as a process of integrating these two otherwise seemingly different if not, in fact, sometimes conflicting ideas. Right now, they're ideas. Buddha says they are true, but right now they are ideas. Right? As in, for you and me, it's still on the level of ideas. So you have to take them and turn them into your own experience. And then from experience, conviction arises. Then more and more, perhaps they become truths for you. So some of you have heard me say, jokingly, not really just jokingly, but I mean it. The Buddha taught the Four Noble Rumors. Don't come to these teachings as the Four Noble Truths. Like they are, like, for the four golden calves that you worship, and they're going to save you. But it's best, respectfully, yes, the Four Noble Rumors. And then the process of waking up is from rumors, they become verified as truths through your own experience. Otherwise, it's just, a creed that you recite to be admitted to EBS, the secret handshake at the door. What's the Four Noble Truths? We just recently bought a new property in Cusco, Peru. And in this transitional period, it used to be a hotel, a fairly known hotel. Modest, but nice, fairly known hotel. And so people are like still randomly turning up. And not so randomly in some cases, actually. Booking.com took their money, and then they come knocking on the door. We're like, we're a Buddhist temple now. They're like, what? And then one day I came back, and it's just some random guy sitting in the, the reception area, like paying attention to the phone, not paying attention to us. And I kind of look at him, and he wasn't looking up. And I look at the front desk guy. I'm like, since I don't speak Spanish, so I got someone to ask the reception guy, what? Who is that? And the reception guy was like, I don't know. Because, they're still like kind of functioning like a hotel. I mean, long story short, I told the members, I was like, okay, there's a code word to come in to this building starting from now. When you ring the bell, whoever opens the door will ask you, what's the code word? And you have to say, Om Mani Padme Hum. And if you don't, and then I told the reception people, if they don't know the code word, tell them, we're no longer a hotel. Bye-bye. But EBS maybe don't need to do that. No one's coming here and thinking, is this the hotel? Is this where the lobbyists hang out? No, across the street. Four Noble Rumors. Yeah. So one big rumor is that in this complete understanding of what is this? What is this? What is this? Is that on the ultimate level, view from the ultimate, it's like a dream, it's like a magical illusion. When they say illusion, that's actually a more precise. You are to understand it as a magician's illusion. It's not any illusion. It's not delusion. Right? It's not like you ingested the wrong food and you're hallucinating, or right food and hallucinating. It's talking about a magician's illusion. Right? So conjured up intentionally. That reality or life or what we experience has been conjured up like a magician's illusion, like a dream. And to update that metaphor, I would say like a movie, like a play. So that's one side. On the relative side, things play out things unfold according to the principle of causality, cause and effect. So these two, understanding karmic causality on a relative level, is the basis of love and compassion towards all beings. Understanding the illusory, dreamlike nature of experiences is the basis for giving rise to liberating wisdom. And Buddhas are the perfection of wisdom and love and compassion. These are what Buddhas are. And then often when we think perfection, as in they have perfected wisdom and they have perfected love and compassion, we tend to think of this perfection as they have increased their wisdom and love and compassion to infinity. That could be true. But that's a way harder, kind of place to relate to. And then because we all suffer from degrees of poverty mind, then you will never match up to this ideal. Infinite wisdom, infinite love and compassion, right? And then for most of us with baggage of God and godly parents still kind of somewhere in there, then we just turn him into another godlike figure. Not helpful. Not that we have any fights to pick with God. If God exists, God is just fine. He's not the problem. It is not the problem. She is not the problem. Yeah. That's really more the Buddhist attitude. Sometimes people say, oh, they are non-theistic, therefore they don't believe. No, they're just agnostic on the issue of, is there such a being, And I would say not just agnostic, but I'll go a step further. Agnostic, and if proven that there's such a being, we say, it's just fine. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to stress over. Yeah. So anyway, what does it mean? When we say Buddhas are those who have perfected wisdom and perfected love and compassion. Perfected in the sense of these two visions becoming more and more seamless. Becoming more and more, you don't see a contradiction that needs to be reconciled. How is that contradiction? Because if they are dreamlike and illusory-like, why does it matter? That tends to be our, smart aleck response. And when does the smart aleck response turn up? Like kids, when we don't get our toys. Translation, when things don't go our way. When we're being reasonable people, yeah, we say, oh, illusory like, dream like, and we like, yes, I get it. I understand. But that's not where the teachings are most needed. The teachings are most needed when we throw these tantrums. When things don't go our way, right? And on the other hand, if we are sold on cause and effect, we have a hard time accepting that it too is illusory-like and dreamlike. Then we become almost militaristic about cause and effect. Self-righteousness and judging mind. So these two have to be integrated until they become non-dual, not two. Until you can see that they are two sides of the same coin. That's how they become perfected. And with that understanding, you can have moments, maybe now just lasting for moments, where you catch a glimpse of how these two are perfectly compatible, and in fact, one is not possible without the other. Then you have tasted, you have tasted that basic goodness. Last night, it will sound a little fantastical if I talk about this. So now the Kool-Aid is served. You're soul enough to come back? The next step. This basic goodness actually has a pretty grand implications. This is also to do with that basic goodness that is available and present. We just need to learn how to pay attention. So attention. I guess it's the word that I use to substitute awareness or mindfulness. I don't know. Sometimes you just have to use new words to get some other insight, rather than using the same words and we all pretend we know what it's talking about. Attention, attentiveness. Atentamente in Spanish. Atentamente. Attentiveness. Presence of mind. Not cruise control. Not controlled by these mental defilements, afflictive emotions. Being present. That is the wording for helping us to give rise to what's called aspiration bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is, bodhi is awake, where the word Buddha is derived from. Buddha are those who possess bodhi. So bodhi is to be awake. Buddhas are those who are awakened. Then bodhicitta is awakened mind. Chitta, mind, heart, heart mind, awakened mind, awakened heart mind. I wish they didn't translate it as altruistic mind. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's missing a big chunk. Altruistic. And altruistic also triggers of a Messiah complex. Then we can never measure up to, he who died on the cross for everyone. Altruistic. Altruistic is only one side, the love and compassion side. If the love and compassion side is not integrated with the wisdom side, which is what makes it bodhi. Chitta is the love and compassion, chitta, the heart, the warmth, the moisture. But the bodhi is important. So this is called to give rise to this awakened mind. And so the initial giving rise to this body mind is to be inspired, right, to want to be awakened. That's the aspiration, bodhicitta. Is to be inspired, to be moved, to want to be awakened, to want to be Buddha. Why? That's where the altruism comes in. Why? Because I like statues of me being made and sold. And then no, not possible to be Buddha that way. Because, it's cool. No, not possible. Because it's pretty hip. No, not possible. Only because of love and compassion for all beings, for all our mothers, without partiality. So later, another recitation says, right? Free from attachment and aversion, to be without partiality. So when love and compassion is genuinely felt, genuinely is present for all without exception, when that is the motivating factor that is moving us, motivating us, inspiring us to do the impossible, becoming fully awake, perfecting wisdom and compassion. That is aspiration of the citta. We have been moved. We have been touched by this understanding that we are crazy enough to make this resolve. That's aspiration for the citta. Then from aspiration bodhicitta, it should lead to now action bodhicitta. So Shantideva says, the difference between the two, aspiration is making a resolve to go somewhere. Action is now getting on the road to get there. And so as important as making the resolve to go needs to be there, and not just there enough to get you out the door, but there enough when you get stuck in traffic and not say, I'm just going to turn around and go home. So aspiration is important, but then if aspiration is only the only side, and you don't actually get on the road because you need to research more and more and more and watch yet another YouTube. And inevitably, when you're looking for another YouTube to watch about how to get somewhere, inevitably, cats will turn up and then you're down a rabbit hole. Yes. It's not that sinister. They just want to show you more cats. Yeah. There's no cabal trying to, turn you into bad people. It's mostly just cats at work. Yes, about cats.
I think what you said just a moment ago is that if a person doesn't believe in basicness, the rest of this is not going to come up for them, because all of this stuff that you're talking about today is premised on understanding that there's a capacity worth developing, right? And so when I'm working with people that come here for smart or whatever, that is the burden there, you know.
Uh-huh.
I'm not worthy or they don't feel
Yeah,
themselves.
right.
And so, would you say something about, and also we may feel that at times ourselves too.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, that's. Feel.
Yeah, because we're not jerks.
Right. Sorry.
That's the good side of it too, you know. You're so sold on basic goodness. Either you're a Buddha or you're a jerk. I'm worthy. It's like, yeah, mom says so. Yes. But it also doesn't mean, you know, if you don't have that yet, you can't experience that yet. Therefore, there's nothing here for you. In fact, the Buddha had many, many things to lead us to that. And it may not be it may not be so centrally highlighted. It may be much more indirect, and sometimes that's simply what's needed, because some of us are so overwhelmed by suffering that any, you know, attempts to tell them that that's not really it backfires, and because they feel like you're not taking their suffering seriously. Yeah, so back to the whole cause and effect and illusion. How do you bring these two together, you know? Because cause and effect is taking people's happiness and suffering seriously. And our tendency is like the only way to take it seriously is to not talk about anything to do with illusion, dreamlike, because it kind of, right? And these days there's a fancy term, gaslighting. And don't get me wrong, there are situations where clearly, squarely we say this is malevolent, this is gaslighting. But there's a lot of other instances where it is not malevolent, it is not gaslighting. It's actually pointing to a basic truth about how things are. But because we are so under the power of suffering, we have no capacity to hear that. Yeah. So what we can do is to first say, I see your suffering. I get your suffering. We are in the same boat. But the whole point, and you can say, yes, this requires you to suspend disbelief. But how about I invite you to suspend disbelief, not on the basis of you should believe simply because I say so, but rather let's consider what are the alternatives. So that will be one way that I will try to persuade someone. Like, what are the alternatives? Right? The alternative is to be doomed to this situation, which obviously you coming here is saying to me, that's not what you want. So if that's not what you want, let's begin with a set of assumptions. Assumptions that are not truths to be held on to, but assumptions that are working thesis, right? The scientific method. Let's work with these as a set of reasonable, right, assumptions, thesis to be proven one way or the other. And I think the Buddha, more than his contemporaries, approached things that way. Sometimes I've said the Buddha, in my opinion, was an empiricist. Later Buddhists turned him into a philosopher and this and that, and tried to come up with systematic philosophy, which is great, you know, like that's one of the things that needs to happen. I don't dispute that. And if we have that kind of mind, that kind of interest, if we are still young and energetic, yeah, good. Your energy should go in that direction rather than a lot of other worse things that you could get yourself involved in. Yeah. But when it comes right down to it, Buddha was a physician of the heart. Then philosophy can kind of stay on the side for fun, to keep you not so lazy. It's good, to philosophize. But that's not his main concern. He was a doctor, a physician of the heart. And so there are many ways to get there. Because sometimes people just cannot hear this basic goodness. It's too much. And they feel like you are not taking them serious. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, to that point where you don't lead with illusion, emptiness or whatever. But with aspiration, it doesn't say you're supposed in.
Yeah.
Illusory obstructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fantastic moms who are just
Yes.
all over the place, but it's like, no, we're gonna, on your own terms.
Yes.
And ask you to do something that's counterintuitive.
Yes.
And it's just going right to the heart of a practice, like forget all the philosophy and the
Exactly.
wisdom that's been accumulated, but just
Yes.
go try this.
In a raw way.
Yeah.
Relate to this. It's okay if you feel you have enemies. It's okay if you feel you have obstructors. It's okay. You feel like they are preventing you.
Well, no, I like this.
Yeah. Yeah. And then let's work with this as a working thesis. In a healthy way, not in a sneaky, smart alecky way to try to prove it wrong. Neither, in a psychopathic, oh, you're right. Neither is helpful, but in a healthy kind of scientific method of let's accept this to the degree of accepting them as working thesis. And let's verify this. So from noble rumors to noble truths. Then the action, bodhicitta. And the action bodhicitta, again, it's kind of simplistic words. It spans the 3 times, in this case, the 3 times, 3 spans of time, which is from now until I become awake. You're like, yeah, from now to eternity. Translation. Right? And it might, to some people, I'm sure it's like, oh, that sounds depressing. From now to the end of time, But what this whole end of time business is really about is like, we don't need to be literal, although, yeah, literally. But we don't need to be literal. We can understand and appreciate from now to eternity means you need to have a much, much wider field to operate in. This is the space that you're giving yourself from now to the end of time. When you have now to the end of time, you don't ever really fail. It's just, try again. And I have sometimes offered this consideration, this thesis. Buddhists talk a lot about infinite lifetimes. Like, I don't know, Even last year, I'm a little fuzzy about, what is this talk about infinite lifetimes? Yeah. Again, the working thesis is there is a wisdom to to calling us to place the work at hand not in a limited time frame, because that will drive you insane. But the wider the field, the easier to sort out these crazy cats. And don't put yourself in a closet with these cats. Problem, not the cats. Problem is you have just locked yourself in a closet with 9 cats. And that's like trying to work on your afflictive emotions with a very narrow framework, which I think sometimes it happens. Like people who want to quickly do Buddhist meditation because they have heard that's going to solve your problems. But then the more they meditate, the more anxieties, the more they become present, the more it becomes unnerving. Yeah, because all your emotions are very raw right here, present. Then you become a bigger mess. These practices have always traditionally, historically been given within a broader understanding of multiple lifetimes. I'm not being a fundamentalist and insisting that if you don't believe in multiple lifetimes, then you don't belong to this club. But I am saying that there is a more commonsensical reason to entertain the notion of infinite lifetimes. Because the work at hand is a very otherwise claustrophobic exercise. Because you are turning inwards. And if you have not yet discovered how much space there is inwards, then all the garbage that you discover is going to be the only thing you are able to see. All the garbage. But all the garbage seems to be all that there is simply because our attention is focused on that. But if your attention is focused on them with a broader understanding, or at least an intellectual entertaining of infinite lifetimes from now until Buddhahood is achieved, 3 incalculable eons from now, it's necessary to not get derailed, to not get overwhelmed. Then from now until the end of this life. Then from now until this time tomorrow. That's what that action bodhicitta verse says. These are the 3 reference points. From now until this time tomorrow, meaning from now until I say these words again. And from now until I remember these words again. From now until the end of this life. And then, can you allow yourselves to have an even broader framework? Then, in terms of these 3 spans, what? What about? It's here it says, yeah. I perform virtuous deeds. Yeah. Gewa is virtue in Tibetan, gewa, virtue. Virtue is basically those causes that bring about happiness. The causes that bring about happiness. Both short-term and long-term happiness. Then you say, well, short-term happiness is staying up all night playing video games. The Buddha says, that's naturally not happiness. That's just avoidance of suffering. There's a difference. That's just distraction from suffering. It's the pizza night that the jailer announces. Every time rumors that, inmates are planning jailbreak, the jailer says, tonight is pizza night, and then all plans to jailbreak disappear. Say, oh, it's not so bad, there's pizza night. So they are not happiness, they're just distractions from suffering. Short-term happiness is talking about acts of virtue that makes you feel good, and there's no side effects. There's no hangover. Oh, so much fun now, and then pay for it tomorrow. And when it's like that, it's not really happiness. It's just distractions. Happiness is something that leaves no residue. It's clean burning fuel. So acts of virtue of body, speech, and mind, basically those are what we call the three gates, the three doors, that happiness and suffering goes in and out from these three domains. They are a fancy way and a comprehensive way of covering our three aspects of our being, right? There's a physical aspect to our being. There's a verbal as well as energetic. So when in Buddhist texts, when they talk about speech, it's not just speech as a means of communication. It's also referencing the subtle energies that power speech. So it's energy that in the realm of communication, it's speech as we normally conceive it, but it includes the energy that is also the bridge between the physical and the mental emotion. So the third sphere of our being is the mental emotional. So these are the three spheres, the three gates. And through these three gates, happiness is produced and suffering is produced. And these three. So it says, with regards to these three, the actual Tibetan word is not I will perform. The actual Tibetan word says I bind. It's two things. I will bind, and the word go is to bind together, like tying two things together. I will bind body, speech, and mind. I will bind the three dimensions of my being to acts of virtue, to happiness producing actions, to happiness producing choices. I will bind these two together. So it has a more active, it's a more active verb. You have to bind them together, right? So that they become inseparable. Right now, they're experienced as two different things. But over time, over habituation, as we would say, it becomes second nature. As it turns out, now we go back to basic goodness and the implications of basic goodness that I offered last night. And then the larger implications of basic goodness that I talked about this morning. If we take it in the direction of basic goodness, right, we should also understand that actually these acts of virtue, they are not only the way to become Buddha. In fact, more significantly, they are methods to become Buddha is because they are in fact what Buddhas are. Do you know what I'm saying? So you do not meditate to become Buddhas. You meditate because Buddhas naturally meditate. You do not become generous to become Buddha. You train to be generous because Buddhas are naturally generous, naturally kind, naturally resolute, naturally unmoving. And so these are, in fact, innate qualities of this basic goodness, that because we have not yet recovered these innate qualities, now we are relating to them as if they are new skills, new qualities that we have to acquire. So this has also implications on how I say, accept these as working propositions, working theses. In other words, accept the Buddha's teachings and methods as strategies, right? I've used that word, that you don't need to believe that they are true. You just need to entertain that they are true enough, right? So yes, so that's a more kind of like practical and maybe less intimidating way of relating to these teachings and practices. But it is also true that the Buddha also said, however, I didn't just willy-nilly made up these things. They're actually based on how things actually are. Now, this right now, at best, it's an article of faith. But it's also useful to know, that no, he didn't just willy-nilly made it up. He made it up based on knowing how things are. So it's not just like, sometimes they say, oh, you mean just like think positive? Like it's made up. Like actually it's terrible, but just think positive. That'll make you feel better. The ostrich, right? And its proverbial head in the sand. No, it's not like that. And so it's based on the natural, the natural state, things as they are, and things as, not only things as they are, but things as they play out without mistake. Things as they unfold based on karmic causality. I know this is hard to hear. All the terrible things that are happening now is playing out according to cause and effect. I know this is really hard to hear. Somebody was just sharing an experience of, heartfelt questions from people who have lived through or living with tragedy, asking, you say it's karma, you mean I deserve this? This is how we tend to hear teachings on karma, right? We cannot help but immediately feel that it's an issue related to deserve or not deserve. But really, the Buddha's teachings on karma has nothing to do with you deserve or you don't deserve. Any more than, the workings of gravity has anything to do with deserve or not deserve. someone as misguided as they are, or under the influence of, drugs, hallucinogens, hurling themselves off a roof, no one would go to them and while scraping them up and go, well, you deserved it, right? So it's not about deserve or don't deserve, but it is about the mechanics of happiness and suffering. And that if you're going to throw yourself off a roof and you're not a bird, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to kill yourself. Did you deserve dying? That's wrong question. Inappropriate question. Has no meaning to ask the question that way. The Buddha wasn't teaching that. But the Buddha was teaching, this is how gravity works. And if you want to defy gravity, is a plane defying gravity? No. The builders of planes understood the principles of gravity and compensated for that. And so something that weighs a ton can magically fly in the air. That not more of them are dropping from the sky is the real miracle. Next time you get on the plane and land safely, you should go, whoa, how did this happen? I cannot even, hover for 1 second off 2 steps. And I just spent 6 hours floating in the air. It's not defying gravity, even we have that expression. It's working with causality. It's not magic. It's working with causality, cause and effect. And so karma is a teaching of the mechanics of happiness and suffering. It's not whether you deserve or you don't deserve, who to blame, who to credit. Yeah, this is really important. But because of how often similarly sounding ideas like karma has also been used and explained in terms of rewards and punishment by God, by state, or by nature, then we tend to jumble them up, and then understandably feel like, you're saying that I deserve this, or you're saying that I don't deserve this. That's not what the Buddha is talking about when he's talking about cause and effect. So when we bind ourselves, the binding is, you could say, a temporary understanding. It's the understanding in the interim, because it actually, I think, expresses how it could feel like you're binding together two things that don't belong. Oil and water. No matter how vigorously you shake them together, they remain separate. Infused butter is quite magical. I don't know how they do it. But in the interim, it feels like our actions of body, speech, and mind and virtue is something that needs to be forced together, binding together. But actually, well, they say, actually, no, it's what you naturally would do if you have not been educated badly. If you have not been miseducated in the confusions of samsara, this would be what you would naturally do. These actions of body, speech, and mind that are productive of happiness. Happy people don't go about causing suffering. Only unhappy people do that. And these days, lots and lots of unhappy people. Revenge of the unhappy people. They have gotten the upper hand, but don't forget, they are unhappy people. Free hugs. We need to go give more free hugs. Somebody did not love them. Is it somebody's fault? No. Whoever that somebody is. Because in the end, right? We choose. We do, you know. Again, that's hard to hear. Immediately, again, it's heard, you know, because how much people are suffering. They hear it as, you mean I am to blame? Again, right? The blame game. But there's no way to really teach what the Buddha taught without being honest about this. Are there unjust systems in place? Are there structural injustice? Yes. Are there unjust systems in place? Yes. Should we work on dismantling them? Yes. Don't conflate, don't confuse these two points, you know? Because those unjust systems in place, those you know, those causes of suffering that are put in place, they need to be dismantled. And that's one side of this equation. The other side of the equation is the minds that experience suffering need to remove the seeds of suffering. The unjust systems put in place intentionally or unintentionally, they are the conditions of suffering. So the Buddha talked about causes and conditions. Conditions are provided by others, innocently or not so innocently. Causes are provided by ourselves. Can you minimize the conditions? Sure. If you're an alcoholic, don't go hang out at bars. You minimize the conditions. But at the end of the day, you cannot eradicate all conditions. And the point of even saying that is not don't work on eradicating conditions. The point of saying that is, but what do you know what can be completely eradicated? Causes. And those belong to you. So it's good news. Good news, it's an inside job. Bad news, it's an inside job. Yes.
Causes in terms of action of action.
Yes. So causes are actions of body, speech, and mind that are driven by, influenced by, informed by, powered by intentions, both skillful and unskillful intentions. That becomes a karmic cause. There were other ideas about what karma was in the Buddha's time and to this day. There are alternative explanations in India. So this morning I was just talking about there's an alternative or a separate religious tradition that goes back to the Buddha's time, and in fact, maybe 50 years before the Buddha. And the religion still exists today. It's called the Jains. So the Jains also have a system of belief that in many ways very close to Buddhism. But Buddhists find that inconvenient, so we pretend they don't exist. But there are also crucial differences. So one difference is that, and I'm going to misrepresent them, not because of malevolence, but it's just how Buddhist texts tend to talk about them. That apparently one big difference is that whereas the Buddha says that karma is not just any and all causes, right? Any and all actions, but actions that are motivated by intentions, actions that are given birth by intentions. Then in the realm of intentions, there are skillful and unskillful intentions. Unskillful intentions are intentions that are empowered intentions that are made alive by the afflictive emotions, the mental defilements. That's what makes them unskillful intentions. Skillful intentions are when, they are intentioned by the opposite of the mental defilements. In other words, all the good stuff from basic goodness. So Buddha defined karma in that way. But in this other spiritual tradition, they say, no, karma is all actions. Even when you don't intend it, if it is an action, it carries result. And the only way to finally escape results is to cease all actions. Like literally cease all actions. So there is a tradition of, it sounds scarier than it actually is, I think. So it's said that there is a tradition among the Jains to basically fast until you die. But no religion would recommend that as, hey, why don't you start doing that? So practically it's done when Jains are terminally ill, sick, or just old age, very clearly. So then many of them will say, okay, now is the time to manifest or to do the final letting go of actions completely. So they stop eating and stop drinking. Said that is a better way to die when you relinquish all actions. And that Buddha didn't accept that position about actions.
Is there a distinction between causes and effects?
Yes, actually, karma and vipaka. There are two words in Sanskrit and Pali. Karma and vipaka. Cause, karma is action in the sense of causes. Vipaka is result. But shorthand, we just say karma. So now we have to, in English, we have to more precisely translate as karmic cause and effect. Karmic causality, sometimes shorthand. Yeah.
And is there a separate word for conditions?
Huh?
For conditions?
Yes, pratyaya. Yeah.
So the actions also are in context.
Yes. So if you want to include everything, it's a little mouthful, Cause, conditions leading to effects. Effects that become conditions for certain types of causes to arise. So then it becomes really complex. You do not become all-knowing by trying to memorize as if there's a recipe for if there is 7% of greed combined with 49% of compassion combined with 21% of jealousy, it will then result in getting your restaurant reservation, but biting into a bit of stone and chipping your tooth. There isn't, this is not how you get to all knowing, by trying to figure out all these things. Just in case you think that's how you get to all knowing. Actually, no, you get to all knowing by removing what we call obscurations or stains or coverings that prevent all knowing. And what is that stain? And that stain, actually very simple. That stain or that inhibitor is the inhibitor of believing that there are essences to what's basically impersonal forces. Impersonal building blocks of experience. And what are we talking about? Such as something is said to have properties of solidity. Some things are said to have properties of heat. Some things are said to have the properties that we call male or female. So, okay, footnote. You're like, wait, what about, third gender? Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah. What about, neither? Yeah, why not? Those are all, qualities and characteristics. As long as we believe or hold on to this belief that they are irreducible, unchangeable qualities, as long as we still have that, they are the inhibitors of all-knowingness. So to achieve all-knowingness is not a matter of building up information, but tearing down the inhibitors of what's a natural skill. Kind of interesting. They say Buddhists have that natural skill, meaning you have that natural skill, but now the inhibitors are very strong. So there's a lot of language of purifying, which I feel now also wrong word. Yeah, it should be clearing, not purifying. Clear. People talk about purifying your delusions. No, delusions cannot be purified. Delusions are by definition delusions. They can only be cleared. You purify your mind. Yes. Meaning you remove the mental defilements from mind. We take a break. It's 11:20. We take a short break, 20 minutes maybe. For those of you on Zoom. I mentioned this yesterday, that one of the strengths of Buddhist practice, Buddhism, is that it has a strong wealth of formal methods for cultivating, for developing the various skillful virtues, mindset, attitudes that it describes. So not only does it do Buddhist teachings go into the advantages, the rationale, the reasons for compassion, for resolute mind, and so on and so forth. Not only does it, spend a lot of time emphasizing these things, it also says, and here are things that you do in order to habituate, in order to become more and more familiar with these qualities. And this is, if you take away the fancy word meditation, this is essentially what all these things that we call meditation. Exactly what's going on is the habituating of a set of attitudes, of a set of understanding, so that this understanding, this particular attitude is not just superficially there on a good day, superficially there when we are thinking deep thoughts, but reliably there because it's part of, you could say, how your heart is constituted. That that all experiences have this dreamlike quality, this magician's illusion-like quality. So these dreamlike, illusion-like beings that we feel compassion and loving kindness towards are still dreamlike, illusory-like. And up to even Buddhas being dreamlike and illusory-like. And you're like, what does that mean? That even Buddhists are dreamlike and illusory-like. I think we can try to understand this statement from two kind of perspectives. Sentient beings that we feel compassion and love towards. Buddhas that we hold up as examples to actualize, to emulate. That part of their nature is the same illusory-like, dream-like quality. So what is this intended to do? This phrasing here. What is it intended to do? It's intended to remind us that these beings that we feel love and compassion towards, these Buddhas that we admire, where is this all going on? Exactly where is this all taking place? Yeah, here, here. Yeah, right. Yeah. And insofar as it's taking place inside, so to say. For that reason alone, it's illusory like, it's dreamlike. And for many of us, that's a little uncomfortable. You mean I have to work so hard on it and it's still illusory like, dreamlike?
Lucy, Romeo.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Hello. Good to hear your voice.
Okay, good. I love y'all. Miss you.
We too.
Okay. Yay.
That was not.
Dreamlike, illusory. Because where did it happen? Yeah. And then you're like, surely it happened beyond here because, there's 20 of us having the same experience. That's just an assumption we're having the same experience. Maybe you could say we're having a similar dream, similar magician's illusion, but far from identical. And what that does is not to minimize or to trivialize the experience, but is to point to the essential availability of space around that experience. And that's one of our essential kind of like one way to think about what is it that gets us all jammed up? What is it that gets us all bent out of shape is failing to recognize and work with the essential space that is there to even allow that display of the magician's illusion to allow the dream to take place. It's this essential quality of space, is this essential quality of possibilities. And that possibility includes the possibility of the bleep hitting the fan. So it's not all just possibility of, unicorns and rainbows. But whether it's unicorns or rainbows turning up, or bleep hitting the fan and creating a mess, that essential space is what makes it possible. And that essential space, that space-like quality, is said to be a quality of the mind, the heart. So the heart mind has no limits. It has no shape and form, and yet shapes and forms temporarily arise, momentarily arise. So traditional texts use this poetic expression, the wheel of momentariness. Wheel has this connotation of that it continues. So it continues uninterruptedly. I was just coming across this one phrasing that said, very nice actually, this way of phrasing. It says, like phenomena or experiences are fleeting and momentary, but its continuity is endless. In simpler terms, you're like, the only thing permanent is impermanence. It's not wordplay, it's true. So the momentary nature of everything is as it is momentary. But momentarily, a wheel is the continuity of momentariness. And that continuity, right, of momentariness is also a quality of the mind. And sometimes poetically expressed as the all-pervasive nature of mind. So mind is said to be empty. Mind is said to have the ability to know, and that's the clarity aspect. And then mind is said to have the aspect of all pervasiveness, and sometimes called all possibilities, that it can become whatever the conditions that are there to allow it to become momentarily. So the all-pervasive, unimpeded nature of mind, the clarity nature of mind, and the emptiness nature of mind. Now we are going deeper into this basic goodness. We can start basic goodness at a place where we don't need it to go so far, which is the basic goodness I was talking about yesterday. Which is, by the way, for those of you who are familiar with this expression, you can credit Chogyam Trungpa for using this expression. But the way he uses it is more about the Buddha nature side of things, which is what we started talking about today. Yeah. But I'm suggesting yesterday that there's something that doesn't need to be understood as Buddha nature or your innate purity and all that kind of things, but that if we pay attention, if we know how to step back, if we stop, at least temporarily, stop allowing our minds, our attentions to be dragged around by conditions, we can discover something that is very basic, very very energizing, that is there. Right? The Dhammapada says, pleasure or bliss, that whole range of experiences, that depending on intensity and context, you use different words, right? Bliss, happiness, pleasure. Says that this is a natural capacity of the body. You don't normally think of a text like Dhammapada to say things like that, but it's there. That the body has this natural capacity to experience that. Then it goes on to say, but it turns into pain when we grasp. When we grasp that. And then maybe I would elaborate, not in the Dhammapada, at least not in the context of that passage. Because we have done that and experienced pain as a result, then instead of abandoning grasping, we fault the body. Then we shut down the ability, the willingness to experience the natural capacity of the body to experience pleasure. Pleasure that is not the type where, like, scratching an itch, you scratch until you bleed. We're not talking about that kind of pleasure. It's actually talking about a more basic ease that the body has a capacity for. But because of in past experiences when we experience that, then because we don't understand, we were not careful, then quickly grasping enters the picture, and then grasping gets out of control. Then what started off as an experience of ease and pleasure then turns into pain and entanglement. And because we were burnt that way, then we say it's all bad, right? Then we shut it down. Then we lose that capacity to experience basic goodness. So we can start from there. And so then we can practice, meaning familiarize ourselves with certain forms of meditation that helps us to recover this ability to experience basic goodness in that sense. And one of them is what we did this morning when we started. The notion or the attitude of, I sometimes use this verb of inviting body and mind to be present. Almost like introducing two people who have not met each other before. Initially, it feels that way. But after long enough, they realize that they actually know each other very well. But through time, through the hardships of life, drifted apart until they don't recognize each other anymore. And now you reintroduce body and mind. These two old friends. Then allow this deeper pleasure without entanglements to turn up. And then when it turns up, be content to not own it. Because that's how grasping begins. Own it means we identify with it. Don't own it, but let it pervade your being. Then leave it impersonal. Not me, not mine. Not me, not mine. Don't identify with it. Don't hoard it. Don't claim it. Initially, it's ephemeral, unstable. Its identification kind of bleeps, jumpy. But if you do it again and again, then it will begin to stay. It will begin to abide. Then from this state of abiding, it can become stable. And then when it's stable, it can begin to go beyond, to radiate in a way. These are stages of working with the meditation, the guided meditation that we did this morning. At least one of the goals is to do that. I just have a random story of re-meeting old friends. It's a nice random story. You want to hear? Even if you don't want, sorry, too late. So I brought a group of monks and nuns to Cusco, Peru recently from India. Mainly is to feature a group of nuns and have them be like the main show, so to say. A cultural exchange on some level. So, making sand mandala, some of you have seen that, at the grocery store or at the college. Uh, then there's like the so-called monastic dances to manifest the deities, ritual performance. But alongside the main group of nuns who were doing that were several monks. And one of them is a senior monk in his 70s, I believe. And specifically, he was the teacher to the nuns on these like ritual arts. So that's one of his roles. The other side, we brought him also because he is now the nuns have left, but he's still there. He is there to make a statue for us, a clay statue for the new center. And I was introduced to him through his nephew, a young monk in his 20s, speaks good English, learning how to do translations of Tibetan texts into English. And we have connected. He came up to me at some point, during one of my visits to India. And we became friends. And then he introduced me to his uncle, who is the older monk. Then I was inspired to invite him somewhere. I didn't know yet at that point where. I said, hey, if I invite you to the West to make a statue, would you go? He's like, yeah, sure, you arrange it. And then yada, 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 this happened. And then he's in Peru. And right before I left Peru, just having lunch or tea or whatever, talking to the nephew, uncle, I think it was during breakfast. It turns out in 1999, the first time I went to our main monastery in exile in India. And it was funny because a few days before that breakfast, I thought of the 1999 first visit to the monastery, and I remembered a young monk that had just arrived at the monastery and was having a hard time. Parents just dropped him off and they went back to Ladakh, and he's constantly crying. Long story short, it's this monk.
Wow.
It was very nice, because he then that morning started talking about when he was young at the monastery. And then I'm like, wait a minute. When did you get to the monastery? And then he started like, it was la la la. It's like 99. I was like, was there anybody else your age? He was like, no, I was the youngest. I was like, did you cry a lot? And he laughed. And there was another friend who was there, older, and he was like, yeah, he cried a lot. I was like, you are the monk. And one time, because I remember this, because he was like on the second floor and having a tantrum because he missed his family, and he was threatening to jump off the second floor. And monks being monks, what do? They are down there cheering him, jump, 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 jump. And it got him even more upset. He was just crying and crying. I want to go home. I want to go home. And then I said, yeah, and then you would come over to where we were staying because we had candy. And it's like, I'm starting to remember. It's like many people came, guests, And then I remember vividly, we were learning how to play this thing called damaru, this small hand drum. And it was him that, watching us do that and going, probably in his mind, it's like, they don't know what they're doing. And I remember vividly, he showed me. And now he is in Cusco teaching our members how to play the ritual instruments. And I remember him doing this. He held his hand, and this is probably what he was shown. He held his hand and he did this. That this is the movement you're supposed to exercise your fingers with. Not, don't turn your wrist. Turn your two fingers. And this. And then for the month that we were there, it became kind of a running joke. He would come in front of our window and go, and then he would run off. And it's this young man now,
How old was he?
yeah, tall.
Oh, he's 6 or 7 or?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, tall.
Thanks.
It's just how things just magically we got connected, reconnected. So meeting of old friends, where neither even remembers until. So these long lost friends, body and mind, let them become friends again. It will begin with some curiosity, but underneath that curiosity is some recognition that we actually know each other from a long, long time. So that kind of conviction, confidence, and then slowly, body and mind becomes more workable. It doesn't need to be this Herculean effort we need to somehow get the mind to be this way or that way. Trusting that there is a place that both body and mind knows to go to. If you would allow them to go to, then they will. So in some ways, it's active getting out of the way of body and mind settle. It's not trying to achieve something, but rather to get out of the way as you invite body and mind to settle. And to do that, as I said in the instructions, so maybe now is a good time for you to try to recall some of the things I said. That at least in the case of this meditation, this approach, we are not recommending single pointed focus, whether it's on breath or on a light or on a Buddha statue or on a pebble. You're not training that ability. There is a time and place where those types of trainings become relevant, but especially when we're just starting, first we want to find a place to let body and mind settle into their own places. And they have their natural places to settle, which is the body resting in mind and mind resting in body. So for that purpose, it's not necessary to have this, laser-like single pointed focus. Rather, to think of it as having a repertoire of resources that you will use for the purpose of settling both body and mind. So sometimes it's breath. Sometimes it's breath as an experience of body expanding, contracting. So it's not even breath, like say, on the tip of your nose. And that's useful to tighten things when it becomes too loose. But you don't, again, the goal here is not to tighten so much until body and mind cannot settle. Then the experience of breath as a whole body experience. So you can feel how subtle, it's subtle, but then subtle or not is a matter of perspective, right? When you are not familiar with paying attention, then it's very subtle. When you begin to pay attention, as your attention becomes more and more refined, then this expanding and contracting can feel like, you know, the earth is breathing, expanding and contracting. Like the earth itself is breathing. And so that's another resource you have for this purpose. Then that gets a little stale or dull, or your mind begin to wander, right? Then you can turn to the elements, the quality of the four elements associated with the body, the quality of solidity, the quality of heat, the quality of motility, movement, and the quality of fluidity, dampness, moistness. So these are four qualities of the physical body that you can kind of check in with. You can begin to feel the weight, the mass. But before you let the weight and the mass get too weighty, then you can turn your attention to the lightness, the motility, the ability of the body to feel light, change as part of the motility. So there are various things and resources that you can bring, you can recruit for this settling of body.
All out. It's just for. This is. Have anything to do with the way it would have remembered himself about 6 or 7 on the.
Yeah.
On the next.
It's related to that.
Yeah.
That how he, it said, when at the age of 6, 7, or 8, when he did that, it was effortless. It was some kind of being inspired to just sit down away from the crowds, and then he naturally experienced all of that. So it's something natural. Although in the telling of those stories, they don't necessarily emphasize that. But some later teachers, like, great masters, kind of tap into that story and elaborate it and say, this is really what's going on. Then this is like a kind of preliminary. Then if you are like a spiritual athlete, which most of us are only that on TV. But if you're a spiritual athlete, then you would go through all the trainings, right? The tightening of the mind, the loosening of the mind, all of that, right? The people who go into 3 years, 6 year, 9 year, 12-year retreat. If they're doing it right, otherwise, mostly they're sleeping. But they're doing it right. There's a lot of effort in the interim. But a secret, after all that effort, it leads back to the naturalness at the beginning. But now you can have way more depth to that naturalness that you tasted at the beginning. It's different after the discipline of going through the interim where a lot of effort is exerted. Then you settle again to the second naturalness, so to say. And that is what mostly you then train in. But most of what we are doing is going to the gym once a week. Which is not bad. And it's fine. Yeah. I mean, just be realistic, Recognize that that's what I'm capable of doing now. So going to the gym once a week, congratulations. It's not easy. You've made a commitment. Then you can be inspired by the athletes. or intimidated. The other day I was driving through this other town adjacent to Asheville, North Carolina, in Weaverville. In some strip mall, small strip mall, there's a sign that says, not says, it's the name of the gym. It's called the No Bros Gym. I'm like, oh, sign me up. That's because you get intimidated by the bros. They're not helpful, you know. And those spiritual athletes, okay, you go to your own gym, leave us alone. We just want to be slightly healthier than before. That's good. It's good because to whatever degree you can be slightly healthier than before, it has an impact on people around you. Yeah, so that's the bodhicitta. Do it because it will not only bring you good, it will bring good to people around you. But not with a lot of expectations, simply an understanding that it will bring good to people around you. And what really affects the quality of our exercises, the formal exercises, and what keeps the formal exercises on track, and what keeps us on track with the formal practices is strengthening this being moved to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all our mothers. So it's said that bodhicitta is that special ingredient that makes everything better. This motivation, this being moved, being inspired to practice these practices, not just for my own sanity, for my own getting better, but with an eye towards benefiting all beings without exception. Of course, when we say this, most of us have a certain feeling of being frauds, you know, for the sake of all beings. And you feel like, you know, I'm just a fraud. And if you feel that way, it's a good sign. It means you are actually paying attention to what you're saying. And if you don't feel slightly like a fraud, then again, either you are already manifestly a Buddha or you are a jerk. So it's natural. So don't be afraid of that feeling. Like, oh, I'm a fraud, you know. My actions are not really, you know, in line with what I'm saying. Yes, correct. But we can be simultaneously both. Authentically a fraud. Fraudulently authentic. And sometimes a mix of both. So whether it's half empty or half filled, it's not really so important. Sometimes you just feel that I'm in the state of being half filled, and sometimes you just feel like I'm in a state of half empty. The real trick is to go, and therefore, given that I'm feeling half empty, what will I do now? what has this realization? What can this realization? How can this realization impact how and what choices I'm going to make? That's really where it matters the most. Yeah, otherwise, it's again, it becomes like the stereotype of bad religion, meaning you're just memorizing a whole list of things and kind of thinking, oh yeah, I belong to this. When it's just about identity and not really about transformation. And it becomes really bad religion when to hold up that identity, to protect that identity, you are capable of harming others. That's when it truly becomes bad religion. So meditation, the guided meditation, questions, comments. This morning, the exercise we did at the beginning. Crystal clear, excellent. Mhm.
I have a question. It's not necessarily about meditation.
Uh-huh.
I was curious about the differences in how this country and this culture is centered on the individual, the self, one person, and other societies, other cultures are centered around the family or the community as a whole. And how that plays into what we think is our suffering.
All right, sure. Yeah. America is very it's an individual worship culture. Something to be said about that. Because under a certain understanding, you could say that the Buddha would say yes, right? As in, right? Happiness and suffering is an inside job, right? So you can see how it can come from a right place. But even you're not American, even if you're following the Buddha's teachings, and you don't have this cultural baggage, it can still lead to, a place that he did not advocate. It becomes narcissistic. So here's the danger of Buddhist practice for Americans. You are already predisposed to that by your culture. Even when you're not a bad person, we're not even talking about you being a bad person. And I generally don't like to use the word egotistical. I think it's just, yeah, whatever, and judgment is there, whether you intend it or not, the ego, egotistical. And just put that aside, Just the way we are, So American or not, it's a given that there is a basic degree of referencing everything else from this place, right? And that's just how it is already. We all have that. But then on top of that layer, you have, right? This as a culture, the individual is held up as the ideal. The self-made man is held up as the ideal. And so I think therefore there needs to be some caution when you are picking up Buddhist practice to not turn this into another American project. Culturally, Americans are very good at promoting themselves. Again, not as a judgment. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, I don't know how many times I was told when I was in professional life, oh, you need to talk about yourself. I'm like, oh, eek, yuck, yuck. You know, and not out of like altruism, not out of not having an ego. It's just an ego of a different type that is icky, yucky to talk about myself. It's just another way of ego doing its thing. Yeah, but there are general cultural patterns. And so Asians are very good, well, stereotype, yeah. Asians are very good at false modesty, refined to a level that people who don't understand don't know what's going on. Yeah, but it's like, but if you know what's going on, it's like, ugh. I've been in places where, you know, an Asian teacher would be talking and everyone, Americans are like, oh, so humble. No, that's not what he's doing. Anyway. Almost 20 years ago, I think it was in this Buddhist magazine, Tricycle. I think they're still in business. Yeah. There was an article on the Asian American experience on Buddhism. So it featured a good number of articles written by Asian Americans. And in one of them was an article by a second, maybe third generation Japanese Canadian, Victor Horry. I think he's retired now. He was a professor of Buddhist studies at McMaster, kind of the Canadian Harvard. But he also was trained as a Zen priest. And he wrote of this experience of going to a Chinese Zen retreat, like led by a Taiwanese master, that they were there for a week. And there were basically two groups of participants. There were the Asian Americans and then the Caucasian Americans. So they sat through the same retreat, attended the same teachings, did everything the same. So at the end of the retreat, the master invited people to share their experiences. And Victor Horry highlighted two experiences that were shared that really, that he, you know, said, this really describes some of the complexities of when we are learning from other traditions and the baggage that we bring with us. And he said, so what are the two? One and two were both women, yeah, sharing this experience. A Caucasian woman shared a deeply moving experience of how this week she felt a real transformation in her kind of relationship with herself. She felt that she was more in control of her emotions, of her moods. She felt more empowered to be who she feels she really is and not needing to be constantly afraid of and trying to attract praise and afraid of blame, all of that. So in other words, like she got a healthy, probably, develop a healthy sense of autonomy from that retreat. And Victor Horia said, yeah, that's very heartfelt, But in contrast, several sharings later, an Asian American woman got up and very heartfelt talked about how this week highlighted for her how selfish she has lived all her life, thinking only of herself, not considering her family, not considering the decisions that she makes and how it has impacted people around her, and that she feels a lot more committed to considering all the people around her. We don't need to judge which is a better, but such different ways of becoming whole, if we want to take it on face value. And so be alert to that, be aware of that. I don't have an answer. Like you need, 70% of that and 30% of that, but just be aware, as we said yesterday, everyone's samsara is different. But as it turns out, everyone's temporary nirvana is also different. Out of this retreat, each of them had a temporary nirvana that they found, So context, I think, is really important. This idea of discovering myself. So here let me now offer a critique of that. Finding myself. I taught college for 10 years, and even in graduate school, towards the end, I was teaching undergraduates. I taught courses that all the tenured professor would rather not teach. It's called Introduction to World Religions. A mad rush through the Walmart of religions in 14 weeks. Grab whatever you can. Shamanism, 2 lectures. Shinto, 1 lecture. Anyway, yeah, like lecturing to 400 people with 10 TAs. Yeah. I like attention, so no problem.
Yeah.
I just didn't like grading, so perfect. I had TAs, I didn't have to grade. Perfect. I go in, I perform, I leave. Right? Anyway, point being, I met a lot of young people, and because I didn't grow up here, so I'm missing a huge chunk of the American experience. I was complaining to someone that sometimes, I don't know, I feel like sometimes like I can pass as white and people forget, I feel. But even that, I'm acutely aware of like a big chunk of my experience is missing from what you guys have. And so when I was a college professor, one of the things that I thought was really burdensome was a very heartfelt, well-meaning, articulate, sincere students. Carrying the angst of figuring out what what is their calling in life. Not that growing up in Asia, we didn't have this, but it didn't come with the same kind of weight. Not that we were not asked, what would you like to be when you are grown up? In fact, constantly, almost every year, it's like a exercise of torture of sorts. For me, at least, like, what's your favorite color? And I would make up a color because I didn't have a favorite color. What's your favorite food? And I would make up something. So we did that, like, what would you like to be when you grow up? So you just make up something, right? But what I saw when I was teaching college was it's a metaphysical, not just a commonsensical burden for many American kids. Like this idea that I am one unique individual that is not like anybody else. And there is a purpose that I am to fulfill in this life. And of course, most of them feel that they don't know what the heck that is. And to carry that around, boy. And so by the time I left academia, and I think it's just gotten worse, right? Most of them are medicated. Most of them are medicated. This was at Davidson College. Was my last academic institution. Consistently, it's one of the top 10 liberal arts schools and the only one in the South named that way. And these are all do-gooders wanting to save the world. In fact, a very high percentage of graduates, like one of the highest, go into nonprofit and service and, want to save the world. Really heartfelt, well-meaning. But this idea that, like even if they've stopped believing in a God that actively intervenes and, do things in the world, most of them actually don't believe that. But back there's this idea that God has put me on earth to fulfill a destiny that I have to fulfill. And it comes from the individual thing. And I thought it was such a burden. Such a burden. So how many of you suffer from that? Good for you. Say, From time to time, just go, You can't pretend it's not there. That's not going to help either. David Brooks, even before Trump make him look so reasonable. Ten years ago, wrote a piece during graduation time. Look it up. I thought it was very good. He talked about don't make it a thing about finding your destiny, but look around and see what you are needed for. Not what destiny you're going to fulfill, but what are the needs around you that you can meet. And go meet that need. That's what his message to young people at graduation was. So you can have your secret theme song that comes on in your head, but don't wait for people to play that song for you. Yeah? Whether you're in your 20s or you are in your 70s. It's not too late to, it's okay to have your own theme song, but turn it on and off up in your head. Don't wait for others to turn it on or off for you. So that thing about inside, work on being firm and resolute. Outside, move around like wind and water. So the wind and water is the illusory, dreamlike. the resolute and firm is the incontrovertible nature of cause and effect. Gaining more and more conviction that cause and effect is unmistaken. Not to justify bad things happening in the world. It's not about that. It's understanding the mechanics of cause and effect. Just like dare we mention, just like Gaza, just like Palestine. There's one level where fault is to be assigned, and that's too complicated. But where the Buddha can illuminate is the causality of that, without going into right or wrongs, which there is a context for that. And thank goodness there are people brave enough, I hope, to go in that direction. But the simple teachings of causality tells us that this is creating a set of sufferings that will ripen. Not just who is immediately being harmed now, but the people creating the harm. This harm comes back. And this is just the start of more suffering. And often it's because we ourselves are put in a situation of suffering, then we create more causes of suffering. Is this fair? No, it's not. But that's how karmic causality works. So to break out of karmic causality in that sense, not to subvert it, but to break out of these cycles requires a lot of toughness. And say, I choose differently. But I can hardly blame that people cannot choose differently, because it's really, really difficult. Yeah.
Somebody said, I hear a question, said they didn't hear the last.
Sorry.
Somebody said they did
Ah.
not hear the last two things. Oh,
Go ahead, my voice is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
I'm getting lower, I'm getting down.
Yeah, move the chair up here. Yeah.
so, I mean, as we get back to we have such great injustice, such as what's happening.
Yeah.
Gaza or the population talked about yesterday.
Yeah.
We're already acutely aware of.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
all those situations. You know, someone like me, and when I hear talk about partial compassion, makes complete sense. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
hurt people into
Yeah.
the work of justice is inextricable from.
Yes.
The part of compassion, but I can't. When I contemplate those injustices, I can't. Confrontation feels so necessary,
Uh-huh.
and sort of confrontation that feels hard to manifest in gentle terms, right?
Yeah.
Something how can there not just be like this, like
Mm.
arousal of emotion? It's so urgent, you know?
Yes.
How can I not? Without certainly projecting, you know, physical violence or unnecessary harm sometimes, but anger. You why I think something so bad is happening.
Well, you could try it.
Yeah, sure. But I guess more my question is how to navigate Steve or boundless compassion and encouragement.
There's no answer. There's no pre-packaged answer, except you already got the word navigate. Keep navigating. And if you, as I said yesterday, this culture is more attuned to what needs to be done to establish justice and love in the world. And to do that takes a lot of learning, picking up skills, understanding complex issues, layers and layers of entanglements. So I know it's not very inspiring right now because unfortunately our domestic political situation is in my opinion, terrible undermining of public institutions. Otherwise, I would say, start training yourself to join the State Department and get into the messiness of that. No guarantee. If it was guaranteed, then, I think like sometimes the story of Jesus Christ dying for our sins is made too clean that I think it loses its power. As if, Jesus was so certain that by dying he can save the world. Precisely, there is no certainty. And the doubts that was expressed, that is this really what I have to do? Is this the bitter cup that I have to drink from? And very powerful, that whole story, that even God doubts himself. I think takes it to the human level. Precisely, there's no certainty. But you do what you have finally recognized is the hard thing that needs to be done. I would say that, But then now, I mean, who wants to join the State Department? But whatever equivalent, and even that is becoming hard, right? How many nonprofits have the capacity to recruit people when governments that used to at least pretend to support these programs are actively undermining these programs? So we are in a particular type of difficult situation, especially for young people like you. But I don't have an answer, except that I think you already pointed out the answer of you have to navigate. And so as you're navigating, I would say on the one side is wanting to solve a problem is not enough. The hard work of solving the problem is hard work, is messy work. Two, what the Buddhist teachings can give us, again, right? It's the underlying attitude to how to go about doing it. Then the nuts and bolts, you need to get educated in that. You need to learn. Then some change can happen. However, try not to mentally engage it and physically can't do anything about it. Then better to just look away. I know people don't like to hear this. But effectively, all that is going on is you're not able to do anything to change even one person not going hungry in Gaza. And meanwhile, you have ruined your own life. Then look away and focus on which hungry person in your community. It's not saying this is more important than that. It's saying, what can I actually do now? What can I actually do now? If we get distracted not distracted in the sense of like, maybe that's not a good word, you know? If we get, if we get so discouraged that we can't put out the fire on the other side of town, and meanwhile, you know, our own houses are on fire, it makes no sense. Also, there are houses on fire closer to us that we can do something about. But because we are so consumed by how horrendous that the fire is raging in California, and then we don't attend to the conditions of fire that are being set up currently right here, then very soon the whole world will be on fire. So try your best. Not easy. Try your best. Yeah.
Hey, like ask kind of a similar, almost same main question. How much, I know there's not a particular end all be all answer for every person, but how do you determine how much is okay to decently keep to yourself and how much you need to help other people? Because I know where my next meal's coming from. I have a few hobbies,
Yeah.
but I also see and I want to help other people
Yeah.
to get there too. I'm just worried that I might not do enough. I'm also worried that I might give too much to myself.
Yeah. And who decides that?
I mean, you know, that's when I started. with.
See, who decides that?
She was.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy. Lucky you. He wears the pants, but I picked them out. That's what one of my aunts said, actually, for real. It was like, yeah, he wears the pants in this family, but every morning I picked it out for it. That's how they worked out that partnership. Yes, I know. And I also know you're not waiting for an answer from me. We're just expressing the realities and the challenges of being human. That you're even thinking of this means you're not asleep. So that's one good thing, that you're not asleep. But where's the line? The line is don't become an insomniac. Just playing with the metaphor. Yeah. It's good that you're not asleep, you're awake. But don't let that wakefulness turn into insomnia. And then that's when we are constantly triggered. And mentally, when we're constantly triggered, more than ever, our bodies are constantly triggered. So the fight or flight, the autonomic nervous system, is it? Parasympathetic and sympathetic, right?
Yeah.
Yes, one or the other. Yeah, whatever the terms, right? The fight and flight is at a constant. Yeah, back in the day where, you know, our problems are in some ways a lot simpler, which is not necessarily how to outrun the tiger, but just to outrun the other guy that met the tiger with you. You caught that? Yes. So when you go hiking, yeah. In those days, you know, we were not triggered all the time because there were real tigers, you know. But now there are not that many real tigers running around. But we are constant, we have this constant level of being triggered. So then it results in, you know, yes, this is pseudoscience, but what to say? then I believe also then our bodies become inflamed as a constant state. Inflammation is a natural inborn ability of the body to fight enemies of the body. And when it's functioning well, it's not a constant state of inflammation. But just as many of our bodies are now in a constant state of inflammation, our mental emotional is always triggered, always in this fight or flight, always anticipating some mild, but because it's continuous, your body never rests, your mind never rests, and all kinds of diseases turn up. But modern science has also made sure that you are not going to die at 45, you're going to die at 95. But then we have this idea that more is merrier. So we say, yay, I don't have to die until I'm 95. But for 50 years of the 95, you're basically a zombie, living dead, because you're constantly triggered, both physically and mental, emotionally. Is that any good for anyone? No. Choose wisely. And sometimes it means not looking at it. Look away. How far to look away? Just know there is the danger of so far looking away until you have created your Humpty Dumpty world and it's not working. The fact that you are aware of the dangers is sufficient. Then don't worry anymore. I also want to say, you're fine. Now go do it. Yes. Yeah.
And like not necessarily looking away, but doing what.
Yeah, sometimes it's just looking away.
But how
Turn on the video games, you know.
perhaps you could put different find out. They're not- find out.
No, it's not. Yeah, just look away. I mean,
You're talking about skillfully practice.
yeah, and also not so seriously, you know. You're young, just go do something stupid. Yes. Luckily, you're not Jesus Christ. So it's not so consequential. Yes.
Earlier about the illusory nature of this reality.
Yes.
And then somewhere in finding space
Yes.
so that we can.
Right. The understanding of the illusory nature of experiences allows us to discover spaces around objects, whatever those objects are, whether physical or imaginary or mental or yeah. We'll do that this afternoon. Yeah. It's an important topic. That's the wisdom aspect. Oh, 1 o'clock. Good. Break. Hour and a half would be reasonable. Tomorrow will be short because we're ending at 3 o'clock. It makes no sense to go for an hour and a half and come back for half an hour or an hour and a half. So tomorrow it will be an abbreviated lunch, snacking, you know, between 12 and 1. And then we'll go from 1 to 3. And then I'm going to the airport. So now we come back 2:30. Yeah, enough time to go walk your dog and be snubbed by your cat. It's just the routines of life.